is
Yeah.
my failing memory.
Find it very helpful. Yeah.
Well, and particularly for Richard, who I haven't seen for a long time, but I've talked to him. He's
Oh,
still,
good.
he's still,
He's busy. He's super busy.
he's super busy, but he's participating with the videos. So I gotta
Great.
keep doing that.
Oh, so we should all say hello to him.
Yeah. See, if he's looking at the videos, we'll know, he'll know.
Yeah,
Hey,
he's
hi,
looking
Richard.
at it. Hey, Richard.
Hey.
Back one of these days.
Cool. Questions?
This week I've been working on breathing. It's always a good thing to do. Working on breathing within the six, within the six here. And I'm finding it challenging. I partially just to remember it, and partially just because, especially I find in one, the length of breaths can be so different depending on when our arms are going up and down or back at the bottom. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I don't know if I have a question. I might need a review of some of the postures and the breathing. I've been making notes to just try to get that into my brain and into my body.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
well, I've been thinking about the breathing also. It seems like when I think about it or try to be intentional and do all those things you've noted and stuff, I have to unsuccessfully fight the tendency to take a much deeper breath than I think I ought to be taking. You know, it's like, okay, I'm breathing now. Yeah.
Yes. That is, I think that's just a stage in the development of this Taoist breathing. Because you're focusing on so much more than you probably have in the past in Western terms. And you feel like, oh God, I got to get through the diaphragm, the belly, the sides, the lower back, the kidneys, the upper back. How do I do that? And it's a matter of opening up and allowing the breath to flow through all of those areas and getting the body to expand in those areas and allow the space for the breath to move there. So I understand the difficulty, and it's why the breathing for instance, is listed first in the list of Neigong, the 16 Neigong, because it takes years to develop. Even the very basic levels that we've worked on will take probably as much as 2 years to begin to be comfortable. If we get to it, we're going to talk about an even further level today that some of you would not want to work on yet, but we'll work on in the future. Yeah, the breathing is an issue, and it does really require practice. It isn't easy at first. As a matter of fact, it's never probably easy. It gets easier as you go along. um, and eventually becomes something that you don't have to think about. But absolutely, in the beginning, it is an issue that needs to have attention. And actually, we can go through the brief just to make sure everybody's clear about basically what we're doing, although we now have 2 possibilities in movement 3, so you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to go back through it, because I think there's 2 aspects to the breathing that we're probably struggling with, right? One is to make sure we know when we're supposed to be inhaling and exhaling, so we don't get that into ourselves erroneously. And then the other is obviously kind of the method itself of full breathing. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking about the method issue, just as a question, does anybody have a question about any of those stages of the breathing that we've talked about so far?
I don't think so. I guess maybe an observation similar to what Bill was saying. I find when I focus on doing many of those things at once, the challenge isn't focusing on doing those things at once or allowing it, but I get a good sense of expansion and relaxation in all those areas, the belly, the sides, the lower back, knees, the upper back. But the more areas I add on, it seems like the less air moves. And so that feeling of like, I'm breathing, but now I need to stop this practice and take a breath seems to come from all those areas I can touch them with my hands and I feel them expanding and contracting, but not a lot of air moves. And then you need to like catch your breath for a second, come off the practice. They're like, okay, let's try and actually move the air now.
Right. Which immediately says to me that there is contraction in the body that's preventing actually easy expansion of those areas, because if they expand, the lungs, the stupid lungs, will take in more air. And you don't have to do anything really with the lungs except to make space for them.
Right.
So that is a real issue. Because we find that we have to try harder to make it go to all those areas, and when you begin to really try too much, then you begin to not freely release, but begin to contract.
So,
Maybe what
Well,
I'm feeling is really just things contracting, but because you're feeling something in that area, you think you're doing it.
Yeah, because you have to have a sense of all of those things releasing and opening.
So, well, that sort of, this may be a chicken and the egg question, but is the expansion happening because we're inhaling? And is the contraction happening because we're exhaling, or vice versa? Is there so which came first, all the muscular and fascia and everything, or the breath?
The breath is not acting. It doesn't cause anything, except the lack of it will cause your death. But the lungs and the air going in and out, they either do it or they don't. And it is caused by first the diaphragm moving. If the diaphragm doesn't move, the lungs don't have the space to let any more air in. So that's why that's the first thing that we look at. And every other part of this breathing is a matter of learning to not force it but to release it and allow it to expand and open and make the movements that they need to make. But it is that word allow again, because once you start trying to do it and forcing it, there's also a contraction that's in there. So it's not the air going in and out that's making it happen. It's the action, the release of all these areas of the body that's allowing the inhale and exhale to occur. And on that, I get a stunned silence.
We're all holding our breath.
Stop it. So intention is a big part of this. It's like what comes to my mind is that I think of twisting and turning. I can turn my arm and I can then let go of the muscles and I can have twisting, which is an entirely different movement. And it in a way, it's the same thing here. You can get more breath by forcing the diaphragm to move and to contract, but that's not what we're trying to do. And you don't really get that much more breath when you do that. You may get a little more, and you certainly get a sense of, oh yeah, I'm making my diaphragm go out and in. Whoopee. So it is a matter of just continuing to work on it and find how you can allow all of that expansion to occur, and the breath will just fill. So maybe we'll let go of that
I
aspect.
got one movement question.
Sure.
In one,
Mhm.
after you release at the top, I'm having a hard time with the wrists and hands. Should they stay open as you come all the way down, or at some point should they start closing?
They start, yes.
Right?
So after you have extended out,
Yeah,
and now as you're coming back, they're starting to close.
they're starting to close here. Okay.
They go out and up, and then they start to close, and they close.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely. Just as they're twisting outward as they go out, and they're twisting inward as they come down. And the movement is small. That's interesting. One is a really actually a good practice on working on twisting, because if you're just going to do turning, you can get some pretty large movements, but you recognize that it's not doing anything. So not trying to get big turning movements in one,
Okay.
but really getting the sense of the twisting going all the way through the arm and the back.
Okay.
Nothing to it.
While you're thinking about breathing.
Yes. Yes, while you're thinking about breathing.
Energy moving.
Nothing to it. So I'm just going to go through the movements and talk the breath. And I'm not going to do a lot of repetitions because I don't think that's really necessary. So on that beginning bend, you're inhaling. And then you're exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. Number 2. Inhale. Exhale. Now going into 3, you have the 2 options here. What we did first was we exhaled up, and then we actually went into inhaling here. Exhale to 6, inhale to 9, exhale. So that's one possibility. And it does. I'm going to get into the energetics at the moment. The other way is that you're exhaling up, and now you're going to inhale and exhale at the 3 and 9, and inhale and exhale. Completely reversed, which actually points to the fact that ultimately, and I don't suggest you do this now, but ultimately the breathing could go either way in all the postures. And there are some specific reasons for that, but we'll get into that down the road a bit. So whatever you do with 3, either way is fine. At this point, I would say do what feels easiest to you, what works most smoothly. Maybe play with both. See what feels best.
Within a set, don't mix, though, I would assume.
Yeah, don't, if you're going to, in the flow of a set, do them all the same way.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. But you could do one set one way, and then you could do another set and do it the other way.
Yeah.
That would be fine. So depending, now what's kind of interesting is whichever way you do it will affect what you do in going into 4. So if you're inhaling to here and then I hate this starting in the middle. If you've exhaled and you inhale, you're going to continue to inhale. So you're going to have a long inhale and then exhale. If you've done the other one where you inhale and you exhale to this point, then you would be inhaling down and exhale into the rest of 4. In that transition, then you're inhaling as you condense and continue to inhale as you begin 5, and then exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale into 6, and inhale, down, exhale, inhale. Okay. Questions about that? No. Okay.
No.
So what I'd like you to do is to stand up and do a flow and do 6 repetitions of each posture. And This is not a test. But this is an opportunity for me to see where you are and see what refinements I might offer. Don't overdo, Joanne.
Yeah. Probably can't do 6, but I'll do what I can.
Okay.
David, before you said, could you tilt the camera down a little bit? We,
Oh, I'm wrong camera. Sorry.
oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for pointing that out. Two kind of general things I would say first for everybody to really try to be aware of. The movement of the body never ends. So in other words, there is no place in this where as you're coming up, the body stops and the arms keep going. If your body stops, you stop. Your arms cannot move if your body is not moving. So that takes, I mean, it's subtle, and it will take some practice and awareness, but and perhaps training of muscles, because that rising and sinking, particularly the rising, is where the problem seems to show up a lot.
Yeah.
The other is in all the movements where we want the elbows to come into the center, does not mean that the hands come into the center. I'm the center. Elbows into the sidelines. Elbows into the sidelines, hands on the sidelines. Not here, here. And everybody's got a bit of that. So you need to really try to be aware of that. Movement one was one of the ones where not having that continuous movement in the body became apparent. So we looked at that a little bit earlier. Two seemed pretty good, except I did notice, I felt, it was hard to tell on Zoom, but I did have a feeling that you were not, people were not always connecting the Laogong points and then the wrist points. And it is two energetic connections. You need to feel. You need to feel that happening.
And both those connections happen at the sort of the lowest point. Is that
Yes.
right? You're already connected at the wrist before you start as you start your rise.
That's right. That wrist connection is completed in front of the dantian at the point at which you begin to rise. Yes. Good, Bill. In 3, we haven't added in here the spinal bend, which is really kind of a major part of all of these movements, but those of you who have worked on it before could be aware of it. and maybe play with it a little, but I've not begun talking about it. So the movement of 3 at the moment is one in which you're straight at the top. And yes, you have a lean at 3 and 9, and that lean is only at the angle of your leg. So it's not more or less, but it's ideally the same as the angle of your not weighted, unweighted leg. And at 3 and 9, there is an opening out of the arms. So the elbows are moving out, the hands are opening, and then everything's coming in and then back out. And there is that slight lean at 3 and 9. But basically, we're interested in the body being relatively straight. We're not doing a cross squat in this. 3 is a difficult movement. If you're having some struggle with it, I understand and perfectly willing to talk about it further, but that's the point I wanted to make at the moment. Anyone have another 3 question?
Do you put, I guess, a little bit of positive pressure into the ball of the unweighted foot, almost like right before you would to do the toe flick in the end of Dragon and Tiger? You know what I mean?
The connection of the unweighted foot needs to be positive,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. But there's not any push.
There's no, okay,
No.
the energetic connection, but that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
The push, which we'll come to a little bit later, is in the straightening of the spine.
Okay. I guess another question on 3,
Sure.
for the weighted leg,
Uh-huh.
are you energetically doing different things, whether you're coming from 12 and sinking into the weighted leg versus coming from 6 and coming up into it? Or are you energetically kind of doing the same thing no matter which direction you're
Actually,
going?
they're kind of the same thing.
Okay,
But yes, you're coming at it from a different direction, so it feels different.
okay.
Absolutely. Good. Other questions?
So when we're extended at 6 and 9, and then we come up to 12, are we, can you just talk about the spine 6 and 9 versus 12? And
Well, no, Bill, I'm not going to go into that. At the
Okay.
moment. We will,
Jill.
but it's a whole separate subject. And I don't want to just sort of gloss over it. I want to really spend some time on it because that's a real issue in 3, but it also in all the other postures. So no, I'm going to avoid that at the moment, but we will come back to it and be very specific.
okay, that'll get me to come back next week.
Oh, good. I hope you would come back anyway.
Anyway,
Other questions on 3? Okay. 4, another one where you got to keep the body going. But I think the big thing I felt in 4 is the sense that when you have spread to the extent of your etheric body, the movement coming up doesn't lead from the hands. It's the elbows, and they are tucking as quickly as they can. Okay? So this movement is driven by the elbows coming in.
Mhm.
Okay? It's not driven by the
Right.
hands leading up, which tends not to get the elbows in.
Right.
So if your elbows aren't coming into the sidelines, that may be a clue that you're not focusing on the elbows, which you really need to there. And just to be clear, another point here in 4, when you get to here, your arms are as extended as they're going to be. As you go down, they're bending. And they start to extend as they spread out. So you don't want to get them extended at the bottom. This is true in movement 1, too, for Joanne and someone else. Can't remember. I don't remember now who else it was. But I noticed this in movement 1, too, that when you come down, you have to keep the bend here so that you have some place to extend from. If you get to the bottom and your arms are extended,
Mhm.
then you come up in this weird, stiff manner. So this is true in 4 also. So being really clear about that, hopefully. I also saw some confusion between 2 and 5 again. Remember that, somebody, Bill, I think, pointed this out, that the 2 completes at the bottom
Mhm.
here, not here. That's 5. 2 is here. Then this is all up.
Mhm.
This is all down. In 5, when you've condensed, this is coming up and you're still bending,
Still bending down.
and then you're straightening. So 5 comes to a midpoint, and it doesn't have to be, there's not a specific point that it has to be at. It's wherever it's really wherever the energy eventually has risen to the crown of your head when you get to this point, wherever that may be, and then out. It's 5 is weird that way, getting that sense of that connection. But while the movement is similar to 2, it is not, the 2 are not identical. They need to be clearly separated as 2 different movements. Okay.
So 5 is subtly more different. It's not just 2 except a C curve, or with just the C curve. It's
Absolutely right.
yeah, okay.
They are 2 different movements. For one thing, for one thing, 2 is a cross squat. To whatever depth is appropriate for you. Okay. 5 is a quafold. Okay. That's a different movement in addition to where the arms are. Different body movement.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. 6, our newest one, actually, that seemed like it was coming along just fine. Just gotta get, again, guess I might say that again, let the elbows drive that up. And that's a difficult one because when you get to this point, you want those elbows into the sidelines again. So there may be some stretching of the back that needs to develop in order to do that. So that the elbows come in and then they separate as you come down. They don't stick out to the side and come down. You gotta.
Yeah, I'm having trouble finding a happy medium if I'm letting them fly, which gives me a much more rounded feeling coming up. But if I tuck them in too fast, then I close. Yeah.
So you're confusing folding in at the shoulder with rotation of the elbow.
Okay.
And those are two different things. So yes, if you limit the rotation of the shoulder, the rotation of the elbow brings you right in.
Yeah.
If you allow the shoulder to go, but you can have the elbows down already. I'm out here.
Yeah.
Elbows down.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. he says, tongue in cheek. Yeah, that's they have to, and they are rotating all the way up to the top.
At what point do your hands rotate the other way to get on top here?
So are we talking about 6?
6.
Okay. So this is coming up, and here, because of the fact that with 5 and 6, you were working constantly with those connections either into the center and then into the sides or the reverse. And here, obviously, you're coming up the sides and into the center. And you have to eventually, it's the energetic feeling you're looking for.
Okay.
Where as you come up, is the energy ready to go from the sidelines, side channels, into the center and down, and into the sides and up.
Okay.
And acknowledging and being aware that at the moment, it may just be on the surface of your skin or in the Wei Chi. You're not necessarily into those channels yet.
Okay.
But other questions on 5 or 6? Okay. Yes, we have.
I have a question, Dave, on the close.
Yeah.
Energetically, what's happening at that point when you're at your Dantian?
A number of things. We went through that closure last week. There's not any one thing that's happening. There's a whole sequence of things that I went through.
Okay.
So
I'll look at the video again.
Yeah. Indeed, the way you close this is when you complete 6, you bring it right to the dantian. And then you,
Is, when you bring it to the dantian,
your hands.
yeah, should you still have little cloth folds and C-spine and then straighten up? Or at that point, once you're at the top, the body's kind of done and
No, you're going to do the whole movement to here and then you
back
straighten.
down. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions at the moment? We have time.
Oh, that was all very helpful.
Well, that's good. So we're going to look at something else, which the final stage in the breathing, which really, I will say this in here as I go through, but I'm going to make a note of it here too, because I want you to be really aware of it. Unless you feel that you have all the breathing up through upper back breathing comfortably flowing, then you should not really work on upper lung breathing, which is what the subject I'm approaching at the moment. So some of you are at a level where you might be ready to work on this. Others of you, keep it in mind. You'll have the notes, and down the road when it's appropriate, this would be the last stage in kind of basic Taoist longevity breathing. So keep in mind that in terms of Taoist breathing, what we're looking at is the basic form of this breathing. There are other in which other things are done. There is breathing through the pores of your skin. There is breathing through the spine. There is breathing through the veins and energy centers in your body. But this is the basic one. Upper lung breathing is this final stage. And the question is, where are your upper lungs? If you want to get access to them, upper back breathing is going to get the breathing into your lungs roughly about to this level. And when we want to talk about the last 20 or 30%, it's very difficult, and most people actually don't ever do it. The only way that you can really find it is that if you gently put your fingers behind your collarbone, we'll look at this specifically in a minute, then if you have upper lung breathing, you can actually feel the top of the lungs moving up and down. As a practical matter, the general rule is if you're just learning Taoist breathing, you need to be able to do the basic Taoist breathing with the belly, diaphragm, kidneys, and upper back for somewhere between 6 months and 2 years before it is realistic that you can easily start doing upper lung breathing. Otherwise, trying to get into the upper lungs too soon will literally close off blood vessels, and you will feel like your head is going to blow up. It could be a very uncomfortable sensation. So it takes time. So don't rush into it just because you know about it. There are many reasons to breathe with the upper lungs. The first is the breathing from the upper lungs is what sends the qi directly to the brain. The second one is that the pressure of upper lung breathing develops an ongoing basis that opens up the blood vessels that bring the blood from your head back to your heart and make the arterial blood go up to your head. The very top of the lungs will naturally increase these flows. And so that's a good thing, of course. It is not just about the fact that it's going to bring in more oxygen. It is also that it can bring more blood into the brain and open up the spaces inside your brain. And the more they are opened up, the greater the communication between the different parts of your brain. For example, in China, upper lung breathing was something that the really good scholars wanted to learn. This was something they all wanted to learn since they were all under pressure to perform well. So today people are under pressure to mentally perform for economic reasons, because if you don't perform well with your brain, you're not going to get any respect and perhaps no money. You get no position. And as the phrase goes, given a choice, who really wants to work for McDonald's? So that's a different thing than if you can use your breath well. You can do whatever your brain is required to. So in order to upgrade the brain, upper lung breathing is a very, very valuable thing to do. The benefits of breathing with the upper lungs in God's plane in the clouds is that it is going to connect your brain to your bodily movements in a much better way. Just the way that you are increasing the chi of your blood, you can increase the chi of your brain. But in order to increase the chi of your brain, just because you are a physical being, you have to get oxygen to it. But the main point is not so much this oxygen. It is the fact that it can cause openings and closings in really tiny spaces inside your brain. And the better that those openings and closings work, the better the neural synaptic action inside the brain is going to work. So while we have said exhale as you expand and inhale as you bend, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you can easily feel the sense of air and blood going into your brain and leaving your brain. The essential thing is you can feel something going up the arteries into the brain. And I'll show you where those are. You can feel it going up. You can also feel the blood coming down. You can feel the excess blood in the brain draining down the subclavian vessels when it goes back to the heart. Then there is, how do you find it? Well, I have to say, doing this by yourself is difficult. If we did not have a pandemic and could do two-person exercises, it would be much easier because having somebody else feel it on your body helps you to recognize what it is, rather than guessing what it is. So the next thing, however, that has to happen is that you need to use some light pressure down behind your collarbones. And you're going down until you can feel a pulse. And the pulse you will feel actually is very subtle in the subclavian vessels. Sub means below, clavian refers to the clavicle. Don't get spooked out by the name. You keep on going in, you'll finally hit a soft entry point. And when you can feel this point, that's the subclavian vessel. So what you want to do is actually probably take your fingers. You could take your thumbs, but I think it's easier with the fingers. And you're going to press down in behind the clavicle. So you really need to lift your arms up so you can push down behind the clavicle. And whether your subclavian vessels are on the outside of that prominent tendon or inside can vary. So you kind of have to just push in a bit until you begin to feel a very subtle pulse. And this is a kind of a hard one to find sometimes. That's why sometimes having another person do it to you is a good thing. And unfortunately, we can't do that at the moment. This is the subtler of the two pulses that we try to feel. And it is the more difficult one to find, but it's one you do need to eventually find so that you can feel it. Could anybody find it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. All right. I know I can get to the next page. So the other one is the arteries going to the brain, and those are on the side of the neck. And probably easiest to feel, at least I find it easiest to feel with a thumb, but you could use your fingers. It's a place, a location where often when they're trying to check if somebody's alive or not, they'll feel that point. And it can be a very strong pulse when you can locate it. Adam should be able to go right to it. I assume you can. Okay. That's the artery bringing blood to your brain. So one of the things that when you're working on upper lung breathing is you can judge eventually, and probably not right away, but eventually you can judge whether you were able to increase the strength of those pulses with your upper lung breathing. But the beginning place that's probably really the easiest way is to go back to putting your fingers back behind your collarbone and then focusing on your breath and really making sure you're going into the upper back first. And then if you can go a little further up, you actually will feel the upper lungs push your fingers up slightly and then drop on the exhale. And you can actually feel the lungs move there because they go up that high. We don't often think about that, but they're clear up behind the clavicle. So when you're wanting to practice upper lung breathing, you can feel first, are you actually moving the lungs, and then feel whether you are strengthening the flow of those veins and arteries. Eventually you should be able to feel them getting stronger, and they are both happening, of course, at the same time. You don't have blood go into your brain and then stop, and then perhaps drain out of your brain and stop. It's moving constantly. But the first thing you have to do is locate those pulses. So the real, if there's a trick at all in this, it is that you can feel the actual movement of the lungs. And so using that with your fingers underneath the collarbone, underneath your clavicle, to make sure that you actually are doing upper lung breathing. You should feel the lungs expanding and contracting. So when you do movement 6 in Gods, you've got a lot of things going on. I would recommend that you at least be breathing with your upper back for a good period of time, probably at least a year and maybe longer. And then when you've done it for that length of time and your body has adjusted, then you can go to add in these elements. And if you've already been doing Taoist breathing for a long period of time and feel that you have really got it, then you could start going straight to the practice. So what I'd like you to do is really try to feel, just see if you can get the sensation of breathing into your upper lungs. So just tuck your fingers in and just take a few breaths and see if you can feel a little bit of movement there. And it may be very subtle to begin with. Yes.
Maybe.
Maybe, okay. That's good for a start. So when you are able, feel you're ready to really begin to work on upper lung breathing, and again, I caution you not to rush into it, but when you want to begin to focus on that, the beginning level you want to work towards is being able to sustain it while you're doing a 10-second breath. So 6 breaths a minute, which is not all that slow, but it's much slower than most people breathe in the Western world. So any questions about this? Okay. So it may just be a point of information for future reference, or you may be ready to work on it, some of you. And so if you have any future questions, don't hesitate to ask me. Good, thank you.
Great. Good class.
Thank you.
And we have one more before the break.
We have one more before the break.
Okay.
Yeah. Next week.
Cool.
Good.
Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
Good seeing everyone.
See everyone. Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna rush upstairs.
You're the only one left, Joanne?
Just me? Even Adam left or just
Oh,
me
no.
on the screen?
No, on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I know. They're like, poof, gone.
Right. Guess we scared him off.
That was a great class. I
Take
feel
care.
like that was,
Oh, good.
and I feel like, this week in trying to get better handle on breathing, we're like going back over notes from other classes and the like. And I feel like this is just a good put it together review
Yep.
for the things that I'd been looking for. So I think that was perfect for like where I'm at this.
Oh,
point.
good. Good.
So it's been a good class to keep reviewing. Yeah.
Do you feel ready to work on upper lung breathing?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I do.
I thought so.
Yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah. No, what I want to do is really work on this this week so that if any questions or things that I feel like I need to go into our break, because I'll have more time during that break too to practice, hopefully. Trying to get
good.
rid of the rest of my work here. I always take a break between Christmas and New Year's, but trying to expand that a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I need it. So being able to spend time doing this is one of my priorities. Still feeling too off to be able to do the form. Even when I was doing this practice, I have layers of heavy foam pad. So one leg is on one layer, other leg is still a little up. So 3, for example, gets to be a little challenging.
Yeah.
As I have to lean, but otherwise I think as long as I'm not overdoing it, I can practice this practice.
Good. I like that not overdoing.
Yeah, I know. I had Master Joe's little, I had typed that up years ago in my practice space.
Uh-huh.
Drink a little every day, don't overdo it,
Yep.
Yeah, because a few times I have, and I felt it. I last week was a little stretch. What do we do? 10 each, I think. And that was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But I could do 4 or 6 and not do it too much. So
speaking about that, the 70% rule, and not overdoing, I had the Monday class do a 2-week exercise of writing 2 or 3 times a day, just evaluating whether they were doing more than their 70% of whatever it was.
ooh.
Whatever it was, whether
Whoa.
washing the dishes or shopping or chopping firewood or whatever it might be. And it was very eye-opening for them. And I think it's not something I would perhaps recommend to the rest of the class, but you guys could certainly probably think about that. And recognizing the value of Master Joe words of don't overdo.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it's kind of an interesting exercise to do because it makes you stop and really think about that issue.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're working under pressure and you need to get a certain amount done, but how
Well-
you do it.
And what's 100%?
Yeah,
Sometimes I never feel like I reach it. Sometimes I'm at 110, you know, because
Yeah.
I've got a deadline or I've got, you know, you're just. But I know that the last time I got a really bad bout of Lyme disease, I was, way over. You know,
Yeah.
I was just pushing myself. I was working late trying to get things done because 2 of the people on the committee had gotten sick and couldn't do it. And yeah. Yeah, and then you don't, then you're so off balance.
yeah,
And I think that's, you have to kind of look at, then you can't do the other things because, so many other things suffer.
yep. Not to mention your health to begin with.
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, your health suffers and your mental health and your ability to have a balanced life.
yeah. So as you begin to, do you feel that you're ready to work on upper lung breathing?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so does Joanne. So one of my thoughts was that you should indeed be working on that, and you should begin to try to be aware of how you're breathing in the form.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because the upper lung breathing should be happening there too. Easier said than done,
Sure.
but it should be part of everything that we're doing day to day.
Well, right. It would seem to me like so many other things that as that this practice, that the God's practice helps move something along, right? The C curve, we could say the C curve, we could talk about the breathing, we could talk about a number of things, right? And then I find it, once I kind of get that, right? Because you're repeating something so many times as opposed to, oh, we're only repeating it, 10 postures later, that it's just easier to kind of get into the body in God's. And then go, those aha moments of, oh yeah, now I can see how it applies here. Yeah.
Yep. I'm actually looking forward to, before too long, we'll get to where we really look at the C curve, bend the bow again, because
Yeah.
kind of interesting, I found with others who'd been doing this longer, that where I thought they really understood the C curve, they didn't understand it. They weren't doing it. And particularly in God's, where it becomes really important. And so that's really kind of a important piece in all of this that I think will be good for you guys to review and the other people get introduced to.
Right. Yeah.
And I think maybe I'm teaching it better now than I did originally. So I probably understand it better.
Sure. Well, that makes sense as you grow, right? You grow in teaching us. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you find it, do you find you're holding back on Adam and I at times in that class to make sure mean, sometimes I do feel like when you say something, we understand it and they don't, or there's also things I know that a lot of the folks in that class, thinking of Bill, have been in it a long time, but have not done all of the different practices that we have.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's no question, the two of you understand and know things that the rest of the people in the class do not. So, yeah, I'm sort of trying to address all of you as best I can, but I don't mean to be indicating that I don't think you understand things that I.
Oh, no, and that's okay. No, I that's fine. I think actually this time that we have, even though it's technically for the form, is a good time when you can kind of speak more to Adam and I, maybe, if there's something that you would encourage us to do that you might not encourage others to do. So that might be the kind of go between on that, right?
Yeah. I'm holding off on the C-curve bend the bow, even with you, because I don't want to confuse the other people.
Okay, but yeah.
So, but I have no objection to your beginning to explore that, because the difficulty, I think, is not so much movement 3, but recognizing how to do it when you're doing a qua fold and a qua squat, and that they're different. And it's really kind of interesting to me how difficult that seems to suddenly be, even for people who've done it for quite a while.
Right, yeah.
So certainly you can begin to look at that, but I'm not going to address it verbally, or in I'm not going to demonstrate it until we get a little further along here.
Okay.
Right, and I think you've begun it a little. I mean, we've talked about crane neck. We've done some of that practicing in that class. So yeah,
so we'll get there.
we'll get there.
So do you have any form questions at all?
No, I mostly spent the last week trying to work on the knees there,
And
trying to make sure get a twist step in there when I need it. More success. Not 100%, but I almost always have some tightness in the right knee. I think it's from old injuries. But it's felt better this week than it usually does. So I think
good.
Making progress there.
Good.
And it seems like, doing gods and then practicing the form and bringing that stuff in, it just a higher level of like body awareness and finding tight spots that you never found before.
Yeah.
So I'm finding like the top of the calf muscles and on like kind of the lateral side is a real tight spot. Especially moving through the form, and so I did a lot of going through the form slowly, and part way through each posture, stopping, saying, okay, how tight are your calves and your ankles, and going up the leg like that. So finding quite a few tight spots like that that seem to help relieve a lot of that pressure, because I only ever feel anything on the right knee, and the left knee seems like, I don't know, a lot more springy than the right side. But so
good.
I don't know what I've been doing with the form the last week.
No, that sounds good, actually, that you're making some headway with that.
And let go of the C-spine a little bit for the last week too in the form.
As we get back into it in gods, I think it will help. That awareness too. Good.
Great.
Well, any other thoughts at the moment?
No.
And any questions about what we did today that, we didn't,
I guess I got a question. I mean, it kind of ties into everything. Kind of switching gears,
uh-huh,
looking at scapula movement.
Mm.
I don't know why. I was looking at a picture of, bone structure.
uh-huh,
And when you look at the bone structure, right, you have the rib cage, and the scapula and arm bones, right? Everything's kind of free floating.
mhm,
And if you really relax and pick up and move stuff around with your other arm, really like moving all of this area.
mhm, that's right.
So I guess I think I might have tried to overdo the relaxation part in the shoulders, because I reached a part where the shoulders are relaxed almost to the point of being lazy, and finding the scapula movement, or what I'm perceiving as scapula movement, is really not moving all this other stuff.
Mm,
And so, I mean, should all that soft tissue be kind of moving around as your scapula is sliding over the rib cage?
it has to.
It has to, right? I mean,
Because
it's got to be relaxed and
It's the connection between the elbow and the scapula that really
Mhm.
allows that movement to occur. So, I mean, you can move the arms all kinds of ways,
Sure.
and not really do much with the scapula. But as soon as you get the elbows connected to the scapula and allow the shoulders to move with them, then you can begin to do all kinds of things with the scapula.
right. So, okay. So I'm on the right track then, because I
Yeah.
kind of had this like moment of like, aha, where it's
Good.
like, hey, just because we're supposed to be relaxed in the shoulders doesn't mean the shoulders are like dead weight doing nothing. Like it's the movement is relaxed, but all of that is moving.
All of it's moving, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Again, I found, going back to 8 Gates, that I developed. I think perhaps my earliest awareness of all of that was when I realized that was what was happening all the way through every movement.
Mm,
It's that same thing, that you've got to get that connection, not just the elbow, but the elbow through the shoulder,
mhm, mhm.
to the scapula, and therefore to the spine.
Right. Right.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what's been helping, especially in movement 1 for Gods.
Yep,
Thinking less about, what your hands and everything is doing, and really trying to just focus on the elbow and like the shoulder elbow drive.
yep,
The shoulders kind of dropping into the elbow and pushing the elbow out.
yep. And it's interesting. There's one of the Tai Chi principles is kind of shortened as sink the shoulders and drop the elbow.
Mm,
But it's pointing to the connection between them,
mm, mhm,
and that the two have to move.
mm.
Yeah, we'll get more into that too.
Okay.
But that's really good. That's really
Cool.
good awareness.
Cool.
Good.
So making some progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank
Great,
you.
very good. Thank you. See you both next week.
See you next
Great
week,
week.
Fran.
Have a good week.
Yeah,
what
thank
you
you.
do.
You too. Yeah. All right.
Not to. Too bad we don't live in a world where you could just go to work and say, you know what, that was 70% today. I've had enough.